Got it. Okay, I'm going to start recording here too. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamthe, and this is Sudha Live, episode 23. So thank you for hanging in there with me for 23 weeks. So I look forward to this. I have a happy weekly Wednesday session with my student, alums, and past and present on a weekly speaker series. But now, with your coming in regularly for this weekly live sessions, I am so honored that I'm able to do this with you. Okay, let me make sure that my camera is set up right, because I want to be, I have a green screen. Can you see my green screen kind of spills over there? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so another week, another Friday. And thank you for those of my students who are joining me here on Zoom. I appreciate it. And some of you are watching this on YouTube, some of you are on LinkedIn, and some of you are on Twitter. So I appreciate your time because, you know, that's a gift and I'm honored to see you here. So what I would do is, this is Sudha Live and I share AI opportunities. And I usually pick one interesting thing that attracts me from the AI world, and I try to keep it as global as possible. And since we are doing this our time here in 6 o'clock in Silicon Valley, I come from a Silicon Valley perspective, but I try to keep it as global as possible. So I try to cover something from Europe, something from Asia, and from the global South. It depends on what I'm seeing during the day. I try to not get limited by what the social networks are showing me, because you see one thing, then you see more of those. So if you're one of those regulars, or if you're coming back and watching this later, send me stuff. If you're working on something related to any topic that we're talking here, or you have something interesting, talk to me. I periodically bring in a guest for about 10 minutes on anything related to a topic we are covering here. We go for about 45 minutes, but I'll bring in a guest for just 10 minutes to have a chat on, last time we spoke about digital workplace. What does it mean with Neil Miller? We spoke about AI product management with Pooja Agarwal from Levi, and Robert Schwenkter was talking to us about, what does identity mean in a decentralized way for the web. And so it's variety of different topics related to AI. But what I mainly focus on is AI opportunities. As you are navigating the world of AI, you're interested in AI, what's out there that you can actually tap into? I mean, there are tons of courses, and I offer courses on the Business School of AI. We are wrapping up the semester, so I don't have any new courses, so I'm not going to sell you anything now. There are some on-demand content if you want to go specifically look at them. But I do share courses. I share about jobs. I share about fellowships, all kinds of opportunities. And I'm very thankful for those of you who are sending them my way, because I cannot do them all, right? So let me start with our congratulatory note. That was what we do every time. And I want to congratulate Pamela Gupta. Let me share this. So Pamela Gupta was here towards the end of her session last time. She is, this is Women in Cybersecurity, Trusted AI affiliate. They had this conference that called, I think it's called NEACS, NEACS. It's pronounced as NEACS NEACS AI 2021. And day 1, day 2, they have a fantastic summary. They covered amazing set of topics, and this whole thing of algorithmic accountability was interesting for me. And the whole idea of AI ethics and privacy is talked about from a bias perspective and fairness perspective. And Pamela wants to bring cybersecurity into that. And so she's somebody you should follow, and congratulations on an amazing conference, Pamela. Let me see if I can find her here so you can see her. This is actually showing me the image of that, right? So let me find Pamela's link where she shared with us so that you can see her and follow her directly. Yeah, give me a minute. Yes, Pamela Gupta. cybersecurity. Here is Pamela. Okay. Here is Pamela Gupta, and she has her live stream also on LinkedIn. So if you're looking at cybersecurity, AI ethics, or generally, emerging risks from AI or any kinds of emerging technologies, risks from any of the emerging technologies, she's a person to follow. So congratulations, Pamela Gupta. Okay. So next, what I have for you is this week we had at Weekly Wednesday, which is our gathering where we have a speaker series, which is hosted by Yash Yashwini from Bangalore. We had Sarah Abroff from the city of San Jose. She heads emerging mobility. And this was a fun conversation. So what we do is we bring in a speaker, we have a fun conversation, and then the recording goes on to our YouTube. So you get to see it here. You can get a follow a blog on it at medium.com/business school of AI. And also, if you're signed up to Weekly Ved at Business School of AI, you'll get access to all the past recording, at least, till we try not to overload you past 100 hours of recording because it's too much. But you can at least see the last week, and you can go back to a year's time, I think, to go look at the recording for the previous weeks. So if you're on Weekly Ved, come live, join us. If you're missing it, you can see it on YouTube. But here, I want to show you a very fun conversation we had with Sarah Abraf. So what does emerging mobility in a city mean? So I'm one of those people who loves chasing autonomous vehicles and goes hugs robots, and I come and tell you about those things. So mobility is about moving, right? Transportation. But emerging mobility is about new ways of doing it. Autonomous vehicle is one. There are the shared bikes that you can pick up, scooters, and you can go from one place to another. If you don't have a car, you don't need to buy and invest in a car or pollute the environment with a car. You could do that. And then there are these delivery bots like KiwiBot. So one of my class, which is called No Code AI Data Science for Business Users class on Business School of AI, is running a live lab online, bringing professionals from multiple different backgrounds coming together, working with KiwiBot as the business partner. So we usually have a company who works with us on a capstone project, but we do this live with the company data, with the real problems, with these people who are coming from various different backgrounds in industry, experienced people from business development, product management, UX design, data science background come together, right? So as part of it, one of the things we found was KiwiBot was working with universities and with cities. So we said, what is the role? How is this from a city perspective? And so Sarah spoke about KiwiBot, but she's very unbiased to any one company or any kind of vehicles or anything. So here's her perspective of how from a city, they want to make sure that whatever vehicle, whatever technology that they are giving approval for actually serves everybody. And how do you go about serving everybody? How do you actually get feedback from everybody? And Sarah is a double major from Columbia and from Berkeley University with quantitative technologies and urban planning. So let's listen to what Sarah has to say.
I don't know. I think it depends.
She was very humble.
There's definitely overlap, and then there's some major differences. So, we actually have a different person in my group who works on works on scooters, right? Like I don't work on that. So we see it as different enough that we're two different people, but we work closely on things. We both utilize MDS.
Yeah.
I think when we were, scooters have a permitting system right now in the city. The robot delivery, the delivery robots, we don't have a permit. What we have with KiwiBot is an MOU. So just comes under our pilot partnership framework. So it's, we actually have something in the city that's like, you can test pilots for a certain amount of time. And, we push some kind of agreement with operators. And, we were kind of hoping or thinking that at the end of this pilot, we might have a system in place for permitting. But we've actually learned through this pilot that it's still so new, we don't feel ready to do a permit. We probably want to keep any sort of future testing with KiwiBot or with other robot companies to the pilot partnership. But as far as the other technologies and how similar or different they are, I mean, I think there are similarities in terms of deciding whether they are a nuisance, but then there's also differences, right? Like you can't just leave the robots around. But at the same time, if we have 5 different operators and they each are operating, 20 different robots, well, maybe that is a nuisance and it's really clogging up the sidewalk. We're just not at that point yet. And we want to stay on top of things so we don't get to that point. The other thing is, like you're saying, like it's this cute little robot. KiwiBot happens to be a cute little robot. And I think in the city, we were expecting a lot of negative feedback about having these robots on the sidewalk. What we found is like, it's really positive. Once people see them, they like just think they're so cute that they like to see them. So, there's that, which I think is unexpected and all the more reason why it's great we're doing the pilot and talking to people. And yeah, like we're trying to figure out what findings we can take from this pilot as we move maybe into more of the urban air mobility and drone space. It's always hard. It's like we say there are similar areas, but every area has its own challenges, and I think especially in new technology, really does need its individual attention.
So Sarah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Ethics is something that's very close to my heart. Like when we talk about AI ethics and when we talk about the fairness and bias and all that. So I have a very important question for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nascent pilot. Does the city push for minority group representation in designing the use cases, like helping the blind or the elderly? So
Yeah.
How is that taken care of?
Yeah, sure. It's a really great question. And this goes back to when I said we were trying to come up with these equity use cases at the beginning of the pilot. So what we did when we started this phase of the pilot, the first phase, we were sort of done 2 phases. The first phase was really to just get KiwiBot on the ground, test how the technology works, like literally, can it get from point A to point B? Can it cross a street in a way that we feel safe or we feel comfortable as city employees having them operate? I think during that phase, they added like a flag to the top of the KiwiBot. And now we have like reflective placards and that kind of stuff so that it's visible. The second phase of the pilot was to find these use cases that could potentially benefit people. So for a few months, I spent maybe 2 months calling different organizations within the city. It wasn't focused on sort of like minority representation. It was just focused on finding different community groups across the city that represented various interests. So there's an organization called Walk San Jose. They deal with pedestrian issues and making sure things are safe. I spoke with them. I spoke with a low-income housing community to see if there was anything that KiwiBot could provide or be helpful to them. I was sort of speaking to all these different groups of like, Walk San Jose, they're not going to come up with a use case, but they're going to give us some tips for helping make sure it's as safe as possible and possibly as equitable as possible. The low-income housing community we were talking to, we were wondering, okay, is there anything that we can actually provide? Is there a use case there? One of the really great ones that we did come up with was when I called the Urban Farm, and they deliver these vegetable boxes that people do not pay for. This is vegetable box provided to low-income families. They have to qualify to get it. And we just wanted to further assist there if it was possible. We talked to this other group called Loaves and Fishes. They distribute meals to people in hunger. And we've been working with them to see if there is a potential use case there to help feed people. And I think, we've mostly been operating out of downtown because I think downtown is sort of the easiest, least obtrusive to other neighborhoods. Like it's got wider sidewalks and kind of everybody uses the downtown in some ways. I think that if we start to expand into other neighborhoods, we will certainly be speaking to those neighborhoods.
Okay, so you get the idea. So you can actually go to our YouTube and follow this along. Or if you're coming back and watching this, right? So if you're coming back and are going to watch this, or you don't have time to watch this, I have a newsletter. It's under bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter. So it's Jamthe, bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter. I actually put the recording of this each week's Sudha Live, plus all the different links that I'm going to share, because now it's about 20 minutes past, and then in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to share a lot of different resources. So today so bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter, if that's interesting, please sign up and get that. Okay. And then I'm going to speed up and show you a lot more things, because I was thinking there's no point in just me, giving a list of a URL and just, sharing that link. If it comes in a readable form, you can do this. And I will be sure to come back, at least the ones we mentioned here, I'll be sure to come back and add the link on the LinkedIn chat and everywhere else. If you have a question, if you're watching this, if you want to focus on something, you can talk to me. I'm happy to, answer your questions. It doesn't have to be just limited to what I'm going towards. But what I wanted to show you with this Sarah's video recording on-demand recording from a session was, I'm so excited about the emerging technologies. I talk about exponential tech. I'm a technology futurist. I'm always like thinking about into the future. But what I want to do is, I don't want to just say, hey, in Silicon Valley, we have all these companies building robots and drones and all kinds of autonomous vehicles and various tech. And just, it's all there. The reality of any of these technologies taking off as a business is when it solves a business problem for somebody. So I wanted you to get a sense of how a city is looking at it, because city is many, many different people. We have Junior Julian Carbonell talk to us. He, in fact, taught a class about machine learning. And his whole calling is to say, how do you build cities to be smart cities with proper citizen engagement? And so when the city has multiple different people, how do you as a business get involved? And what does that relationship look like? I just wanted you to get a sense of the reality. So there are multiple different deliveries. So KiwiBot or any delivery bot could say, hey, I'm going to deliver food. And I'm going to do it to the people who pay so that they don't need to go and pick it up from the stores or from the restaurant. And this was great during COVID times, during the pandemic. But how do they actually find the multiple use cases and test it out? Not just with somebody sitting in the offices and saying, okay, now maybe we should deliver medicines, and maybe we should deliver something else. And thinking about it that way, the right way to do that for this to become a viable business is to understand multiple stakeholders and what value can be provided, because this is a delivery bot, which means it moves around. It can carry stuff up to a certain weight and volume, and it can bring a lot of different things for different people. So you got the perspective of how, a city manager was thinking about a city and Sarah heads emerging mobility, and she's a transportation manager at City of San Jose, in the heart of Silicon Valley. And so I just wanted you to think about it, because that's a city perspective. There is the entrepreneur perspective when you get started to go build out these things. And then a product manager who's going to pull all this together in the company and say, okay, where do we focus now? How do we build a minimum viable product, which we spoke about? And we had Ananya Sen do a session about this at last weekly event. So I just wanted to get a sense of that, because when we say technology and innovation and go make money and go change lives, it sounds very beautiful. And then we see the PR version of that story, and we have a single thread that seems to drive the point. but I wanted you to think about wherever you are sitting, whichever perspective you are thinking, there is gap to innovation, especially if you share my excitement for technology. I wanted to think about how do I find the gap to innovate? How do I take a technology that I've been given either from a partnership or by some funding, or I've created it, and how do I map that to multiple stakeholders to arrive at it? So one of my favorite topics, the one that I'm teaching now with my no code AI data science course, is how to take a business problem and arrive at a problem statement. And the problem statement finally is going to be, so the business problem is going to be an English sentence. And then the problem statement is going to be rows and columns of data. That's what we would feed into a no-code AI platform, and then the AI is produced, or a data scientist would write some code to create the AI. But that creating AI is done using data. How do you make that mapping is all this, right? By finding the multiple different stakeholders, where are the gaps to innovate? How do you map that, understand multiple perspective, and then test it out, hear from people, go through the design process or service design process. Okay, so I just wanted to leave it at that, right? So go watch Sarah Ebrow's recording on demand at our YouTube. Okay. Now let me share some other opportunities. One interesting thing I saw is Rebecca Tweed collects all and collates all kinds of jobs in the responsible tech space. This time she aced herself because there are a lot of students who are graduate students, undergraduate students, who come and say, hey, I want to get involved in AI ethics, and how do I do that? And so she decided to collate and create a responsible tech internships. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So Rebecca is the program manager now at all. One second, let me give you the URL, right? All tech is human. So I was thinking it will show in the URL here if I pull this down. Okay, so it's called responsibletechguide.com, and that's where she's collected this. It's called Responsible. And if you go to All Tech is Human, you should be able to find it because she's a program manager there. And she has like rows and rows of internships. So pass it on to students. So this one, the successful candidate should be a rising college junior. This is from IBM. IBM, we've shared the Fairness 360 and several other resources IBM has. I teach that. I, in fact, teach no-code AI using IBM's Watson platform. And they have this AI ethics and business analytics and communication intern. And there's tons of them. There's a bunch from IBM, bunch from Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and then a whole bunch of organizations like Aspen Tech Policy Hub, Brennan Center for Justice, Carnegie Mellon Language Technologies Institute, Summer Technologies, just tons of them. So please pass it on to anybody who is a college or undergrad students. And I think it's open to a lot more than just students. So take a look at it. Okay. Thank you very much, Rebecca. And follow Rebecca Tweed if you are into AI ethics, responsible tech, and looking for opportunities, especially like we are talking about jobs. I bring you interesting jobs that I think, will be valuable. But if you want to go through a huge list, then, Rebecca is the person to follow. And before I forget, I am actually doing a session called The Future of Sustainable Spaces with JLL. That is actually happening in Singapore time. And it's about spaces, future of spaces, like office space, right? So again, I bring the, my vision of how the buildings are getting automated, and the vehicle is getting automated. And pre-COVID, I thought they were on a collision path, and now I believe they are on a collaboration path. So come join me, and at the Future of Sustainable Spaces event, you'll be able to see that. Okay. The other thing I have for you is I'm thankful to Rohan Light for bringing this up. Let me share that. Credit where credit is due. Thank you, Rohan. So Rohan actually shared this about from VentureBeat, an article which says, there's an AI startup claims to detect depression from speech. And let me go there. Actually, I want to stop the sharing because I have that window ready for you. Let me find that. So this is an article which is basically saying from a journal that by you looking at people's voice, we can find out whether a person is depressed or not. So this is in the journal Biological Psychiatry. A team of scientists at the Center for Psychological Consultation in Madison, Wisconsin, have come up with this hypothesis that a person who has depression has certain characteristics to their voice. And voice, we talk about voice as voice assistants, and like Alexa and Google Home, tell us a joke, tell us the weather, find stuff from the internet, play games with us. That's where we are. And then slowly these companies are saying, okay, can I identify your voice? And based on that, I will give you a little bit more features. So Google Home keeps telling me, I don't recognize your voice, so I cannot tell you the same photo from my home that is being shown on a screen. If you say, hey, when was this photo taken? I would hear back saying, hey, you have not given us permission to use your voice, so I can't recognize your voice. And if I did that, obviously they think that's a feature that will entice me to go give my voice as a signature. So our individual voices can serve as a signature when they get enough of them and train an AI. But within the voice, to understand whether somebody is depressed or not is a stretch. And there is, this is what these people of science are looking at. So I want to have a discussion on that today, because that is a topic that goes to this whole concept of emotions AI, or making inference from technology patterns in voice. Yes, you can look at voice, you can look at decibels, you can look at patterns in voice, draw some insights. Whether you can say whether a person is sad is a leap. So we have Susanna Raj, AI ethicist, who's been teaching a course called Inclusive AI, and she does it as a live lab. And we're going to wrap up that course for the semester in the next week. So we close our semester at Business School of AI this coming week. But she's made us think in a certain way that we cannot go back to where we were when we started the semester. So one important thing in there was this concept of construct. So what is sadness? Yes, you can see voice patterns and you can draw correlations to that. So here looks like the research was partially funded by pharma giant Pfizer, and they identified several viable biomarkers, quantitative indicators of changes in health, to measure the severity of major depression. And there's a whole industry that's evolving around that, with startups making a lot of claims to understand emotions in general. So there's a whole world out there, but specifically to look at depression and using AI to do that. So for those of you who want to go, who find this whole emotions AI topic intriguing, here on Business School of AI, we have this emotions AI webinar. You can sign up for free. You can go listen to our conversation and analysis on what is happening. What does data training emotion means? What do you expect? And you can even get a free preview of it for about 10 minutes before you actually go in and see whether this is interesting. But what I wanted to point out was emotions AI is not based on sound cognitive science. The data science uses data sets, which, like this voice, is actually looking for patterns. So far, so good. But once it takes the pattern and say, now this person is depressed, this person is sad, then it has to be done based on how cognitive science has, pain. When we go to the doctor and says you have pain, they have a standard scale of 1 to 10 to not to say whether, what's the level of pain. And there are standards for that acceptable in the cognitive science world. Like that, with emotions AI, the data sets are not built on cognitive science. So, but there are companies who will say, I'll tell you whether the person is happy, whether they're going to buy shoes. So right now it's kind of we put in such uses, but this particular study is saying, hey, I'll understand whether the person is less depressed or more depressed. They're not claiming whether they'll say whether the person is depressed, but they're taking people who are clinically depressed, and then they're trying to find biomarkers within that to check for the degrees of depression. So I would like to look at this with an open mind to see what is possible, but I would also caution against this concept of technology just building a construct. So if they have science, if they have cognitive science people involved in the actual study, proper psychologists looking at it, I would be open to it. So check out the Emotions AI webinar if that's of interest to you, and it's at Business School of AI, and I'll be sharing the link like everything else. Thank you so much, Rohan, for bringing this, Rohan Light, for bringing this to our attention. I appreciate that. There is one other interesting event, which is called Data Palooza, which is hosted by UVA School of Data Science, where our Renee Cummings is driving change. So let me share that. And thank you everybody for sending these events and jobs and fellowships and everything my way. I really appreciate this. So Claudia Scholz is the Director of Research and Development at University of Virginia, and had shared this called Data Palooza, which is about learning in action. And so one of the things they want to do with this Data Palooza, and I hope you're able to see my screen showing that. Let me make sure that it is showing the right screen, which is the Data Palooza, which is from the Virginia Data Science Department, right? So what they're doing this time is they want to broaden the participation of students of color in data science. And they're talking about how are they going to do this, right? How are they going about this? And amazing brains are involved in making that happen. And obviously this is organized by Dr. Claudia Scholz. Thank you very much. Okay. So I would recommend taking a look at it, because you need to have diverse point of views, unbiased people of every possible lived truth in your data set. Otherwise, whatever you build, whatever amazing AI, whatever degree of confidence it claims, doesn't matter. It's not going to work for people. It is going to actually bring lawsuits for your company. It's actually going to impact people in society in a negative way. And then you're going to, it's going to be, a hue and cry, and you'll have to pull it out. And if this sounds like an idealistic talk, look no further than Facebook. Facebook has been in news, been to Congress. They changed their name to Meta, and they said, hey, we are not just doing Facebook and messaging. We are going to do this thing called Metaverse, which is out into the future. But in all this noise, one important thing that came about was they got slapped with huge fines in billions for not respecting people's privacy. And Europe has very clear GDPR privacy regulation in place, and several other countries and with different cities in US also have them. And so they made a decision that they're going to pull out of their facial recognition technology. And the way they are going to do that is they have, in 2010, they started out with when we share a photo, they said, hey, you can tag a person if you know the person. And so that created a big viral play that actually contributed to Facebook scaling big time, because I would post a picture, say, I used to run a Facebook meetup at that time. I used to run a bunch of Twitter meetup, Google Plus meetups. I was this meetup person, grassroots meetup. We'll have meetings and a lot of people. So when we post a picture, everybody can come and tag their friends, tag each other, and we would know who is who. So Facebook gave this as a simple tagging tool that created viral play. By doing that, now they know who's connected to who, and went on, and they've tagged 1 billion faces, right? And 1/3 of the people on Facebook have given them permission to tag their faces. And then they say, hey, by tagging this face, we'll know if somebody is using your picture and is impersonating you and saying they are you. And they have like multiple use cases like that. But what happened is they didn't respect about the privacy of people. So they just tagged people, and their images are everywhere, and it's sitting like 1 billion images. And they trained the AI to do facial recognition software. And their facial recognition technology is called deep face. So what has happened now is, now that Facebook is under pressure and scrutiny from Congress about being, uh, the wrath of regulators, so they've said, we are going to purge out this billion pieces of images from our system. We are going to discontinue facial recognition technology that we are using in various products that's available to consumers. But the thing they have done that is kind of hidden under the rug and it's not very obvious is they have taken the data and trained an AI called DeepFace, which can do facial recognition. So the products that DeepFace is going to give, they're getting rid of them. The data that was used to train the AI, they're getting rid of them. It's a big news that they're deleting a billion piece of data is a big news. But they're sitting with the technology called DeepFace, because we need regulators who are knowledgeable about technology. You don't need to code technology. You don't need to know the nitty-gritties of it. But you need to know they purged the data, but they didn't purge the actual technology. They killed the products that were using it, but they're sitting with the technology and they're saying, we will not save that. We will not commit to saying whether we will use this deep-face technology in one of our future products. Maybe, maybe not. And they're sitting with it. So today, technically, once an AI learns with the data set that you've given it, what has gone into the neural network brains of the AI is not explainable. It's not transparent. So when it makes a decision and say, I look at this, I want to open the phone with my face and it opens, that it sees me as Sudha. How does it recognize and what does it have in its brain, how it's comparing? Nobody knows. And even the data scientists who build this cannot say that. So I saw this on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I'm sorry, I have to give credit to somebody else, but I don't remember who they are. They said, trying to see what data was used to train the AI and say, that data should not be there. I want to remove my data from the AI is like saying, I want to remove that second spoon of sugar from my tea. So it's got dissolved like that. The billion faces that Facebook has taken and trained the deep face AI is gone into the brain of the AI. And so now you can purge the data, you can purge the products. So that's progress for the regulators, that lack of privacy of that data is stopped. But the learning from the AI is not been stopped because you don't have regulation on algorithmic accountability. So I want to leave it at that for people who are thinking in that direction to go do wonderful things with it, right? That's my thing with all my classes and things. I want you to think. I'm not going to give you prescriptive answers and say, okay, now we need to go deal with it this way, because if you're a regulator, if you are a data scientist, you're going to come with different kind of technologies on how you're going to go make it transparent. Maybe you're going to do something else. So I hope I will be able to see that, and you can make that happen. Okay. Let me see if I have anything else, because I have 5 more minutes and I want to see whether I have anything else that I need to give you very quickly. Okay. So we spoke about the Pamila's event. We spoke about the Emotions AI webinar. Somebody's asking the URL for the Emotions AI webinar. Okay, guys, let me find that. I will be sure to add that in the link somewhere for you, link of this event for you. Yeah. And the responsible tech internships from Rebecca, I showed you that. The Data Palooza from UEA, we discussed that. There is an interesting event. So I won't have so much time this week to go over it. If this is of interest, we can go look at that. There's a lot of government data that is used to build AI and draw insights and visualizations. So there's a lot of them that is being shared. So I came across this. This is called fiscal data from the US Treasury. So you can go to fiscaldata.treasury.gov and you can actually go search data sets. You can actually find what is the debt, how much money goes in and out of the government, a lot of different things, a lot of details about the data set. Why I'm sharing that is, obviously, if you look at these, there's pretty graphs and inferences you can draw. It's amazing for a person like me who loves data. This is exciting, but they've shared every data set detail. And what is useful for you if you are somebody in this world of getting into AI and understanding data, is they've made this accessible with a lot of tools and features. So you can actually go look at them, play with them, come up with different applications and say, what can this tell me about something in my neighborhood, in my field of work or something, and then you can go look at that. So there is one more I wanted to show related to that. Let me see if I have that set up ready for you. I try to keep these windows open so that it is not, I'm not jumping around too much. Okay, so there is datalab.usaspending.gov. So I hope you're able to see that window here, datalab.usaspending.gov. And again, you can see the spending of the government, answers all your questions about federal government finance. It's just amazing stuff. Finally, they're just looking at data, and then they are it's just drawing graphs and analysis and stuff like that. So what I found interesting is, given our conversation about courses and stuff, higher education, their investment, or there's a homelessness analysis, a lot of good stuff, right? So take a look at that, and then you can actually come up with, I want to do something. So there is, the reason I'm sharing this is, there is a student innovators toolbox. So if you are, for somebody like me who's a teacher or a student, if you want to get involved, they give you a whole toolbox, and then you can go play with it and come up with different applications. So one of the things, as I'm teaching people how to take a business problem and arrive at a problem statement so that you can feed it to an AI, one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is about understanding, drilling down and saying, what are the different use cases, what different stakeholders, like we were talking about Sarah from city of San Jose, different stakeholders perspective. So when you're looking at data, you can start from the data. So what I showed you with the US fiscal data is, you can look at the data and then you can think of multiple use cases and then go draw visualization and say, can this tell me this? Can be done with it? Can it apply? Can it help some particular customer with this? If I understand all the different, how much homelessness is in my state, in my county, in my city, can I do something about it? What is the scope of this problem? Is that something I can solve for? So you can come at it from various different angles. And so it just gives you data as a tool to start that exploration. Finally, you need to bring the multiple different stakeholders. It's nothing in AI is built by one person, one team, one profile, one kind of person. Even if you build it, I always keep giving this example of Uber using Face API from Microsoft to open the app for the drivers, and then that being biased, Uber got sued because they fired the driver saying, hey, you're giving your app to somebody else because it's not recognizing you, right? They didn't think it was not recognizing the driver. They thought the driver was giving their app to multiple people, and they were different people, but it was not. It was the Face API that was buggy. But I always give this as an example to say there are multiple stakeholders. So when this happened inside Uber, the legal department, the PR department, everybody must be saying, is this real? Are we at fault? Do we need to do damage control? Are we going to be sued? Do we need to, settle with this driver? And they'll come back again, this whole question of lack of transparency. So they wouldn't know what data was used to train this AI. So that's what brings all of you into the world of building AI, regulating AI, making AI accountable, conceiving beautiful use cases for AI, because you can wear your lens of whatever area of, are you an accountant? Are you a finance person? Are you a PR person? Are you a business development person or product manager? Are you a data engineer? Are you a engineer who doesn't know data science, who's just an engineer who knows to code? How do you bring this all together? Or you're into social sciences. I like Sarah, you're in urban planning. How do I make sense of this AI to do something useful. How do I do this in an equitable way to make it, do my job to help people within my realm of interest? So that is how I wish, we would go about doing this. And I've been teaching and training my students, and we do this all in, multidisciplinary teams to do that. So I think we are coming to the end of our 45 minutes. So I want to wrap up. I have a question for you. So I shared this, that if you go to bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter, let me give that. You can get my newsletter here. Hold on. So if you go to bit.ly, do you see the URL here? Thank you for letting me know. So bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter, it takes you here and you can see this. So last week we had this Halloween with the autonomous vehicle bot, and I showed you. So I tried to painstakingly go to different minutes where we talked about different topics and tried to show that and share that. I need feedback from you because I spend a lot of time, and then I shared all the different jobs listed, all the events that's coming up and everything, right? So you could subscribe for that, and then I could send this to you and it comes out every Sunday. So that could be one. But LinkedIn has now given me the option to go create a newsletter. So ping me, let me know. I was thinking I will keep this newsletter that I'm doing, the Jamthe newsletter on Sunday, as a mailing list on email, as it is for those of you who are already on it. And I will start something new on LinkedIn, which is, because I'm a technology futurist, eternally curious, trying to look for gaps to innovate between the tech and business. I just thought I will create a newsletter called Curious Futurist. So and I want to make it very short and succinct. So those of you who are very busy going through your week, maybe I can give you a quick summary of the latest, greatest analysis, like I've been talking, an analysis on a topic, an exponential tech that combines AI, AV, data, and help you, find gaps to innovate, get you the aha, what you can do with it to go change your world. So I wanted to see whether that would be interesting for you. And it won't be a long newsletter, but it'll be different from my Jamthe newsletter. Or the other option is I could just take my Jamthe newsletter and just bring it here. But right now I'm inclined to go with a fresh new newsletter if you're interested in that. So give me feedback. I would love to hear from you. I always operate based on feedback because I think feedback is a gift. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. So I'll be doing the Jamthe newsletter still on the mailing list. So bit.ly/Jamthe newsletter, if you're already in it and you like the long version to get this recording and follow along and find out the different events and everything else. I'm happy to actually, continue on with that. So with that, I am going to wrap up. I have an interesting PhD opportunity, but let me see whether I can bring somebody to talk more about it and give you more details instead of just sharing you a link. So let me do that next week. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe. And I hope to see you at Weekly Wed at Business School of AI on Wednesday, or I will see you back in here at Sudha Live. And if you're following us on LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube, just add a comment and then definitely tell me about the newsletter, because I would like to start the LinkedIn newsletter right away. So I'm calling it Curious Futurist at this point. I'm thinking it will be a analysis of a very important topic for you to kind of go on this journey to find innovation between the gap between tech and business, so that you can go innovate. You can be the curious futurist and join me along the journey. Yeah. With that, let me wrap up. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next week. Stay safe. Bye.